welcome. Good evening. We're very happy to have you here. I am Dave Watts, chair of the MIT Venture Lab team. And on behalf of the team, I want to welcome you to this year's Meet the Angels. This is the fourth time that the MIT Venture Lab has put this event on, I believe. And it's consistently a popular topic based on the attendance figures that we're seeing. And given the number of organizations participating, and we want to leave plenty of time to ask questions at the end, so I'll try to keep the intro brief. To begin with, I should let you know that we're all under video surveillance. All of our programs are recorded professionally by Puget Sound Video, the guys sitting back there by the cameras. And they may be accessed from the MIT Washington MITFNW.org website at no charge, usually within a couple of weeks following the event. So you can, if you miss something or want to refer others to the event, they can see it themselves. First, I'd like to ask, how many are here for the first time? Wow, that's a pretty good showing of hands.
You can tell your same jokes again here.
You know, and this is typical of the MIT Venture Lab events. It seems like close to half the audience is here for the first time. Of course, we'd like to see you keep coming back, but we're very happy to see you. The MIT Enterprise Forum is a global organization of entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. We produce programs and events about innovation, technology, and entrepreneurship for a community of 50,000 plus thought leaders through a network of 28 chapters worldwide. The MIT Enterprise Forum in the Northwest is one of those 28 chapters. It is also one of the oldest and largest chapters outside of Cambridge, Massachusetts. And while we have a number of distinguished MIT alums who are active in our chapters as volunteers, most of our volunteers and sponsors are drawn from a broad spectrum within the community. If you are interested in volunteering to help the Enterprise Forum, please talk to anyone wearing a name tag with a purple or green ribbon on it, like this. And we would be happy to connect you with the volunteer organization within the Enterprise Forum and make sure that you get connected with the organization. Within the Enterprise Forum, the Venture Lab's mission is to help entrepreneurs succeed by providing education around the nuts and bolts of building a successful enterprise. Our goal is to help you learn how to plan, fund, grow, and operate a profitable company. Should probably also insert in there the word exit, since most people want to see a payoff at some point. How many people are here tonight for the first time? I think I already asked that. How many are here because you want to be entrepreneurs? How many are entrepreneurs? Wow. Just out of curiosity, how many are thinking about or actively seeking funding? Well, you've come to the right place. We're heading toward the close of our 2013-14 program year. Our last evening event, which is to be about big data, the last Enterprise Forum event, is going to be about big data and predictive analysis. That's scheduled for May 14th. We have another event called Demo, which is where a selected group of entrepreneurs will unveil their inventions, some of them for the first time, and that's coming up May 22nd. On June 5th, there will be the final Venture Lab, and that'll be an exciting war story where the entrepreneur, of course, triumphs in the end. And you can register for any of those events, again, at the MITFNW.org website. I'd like to make just a quick word on behalf of our sponsors, without which none of this would be possible. Would especially like to thank the VLab season sponsors, the FLH, I think that's Frommer, Lawrence, and Haug Law Group, and Point B Management Consultants. I believe the managing partner for the Seattle office, Andrew Wasson, is here tonight. Andrew, can you take a bow? Thank you for your support. And Jamie Wiegand, a partner and registered patent attorney with FLH, is here tonight as well, sitting in the back. I'd like to recognize Jamie for his personal contributions to the VLab team as a very important team member. Tonight's program was put together by one of our other valued team members, Brian Brewer. I'll be introducing in just a second, the founder of Funding Quest. Brian is no stranger to early stage companies and helping them get funded. And through his leadership in the Kretsu Forum Academy, he also helps them learn a lot about more than what they need to do to raise funds successfully. I'm going to ask Brian to briefly introduce Rebecca Lovell, newly appointed startup liaison to the City of Seattle. I'm sure Rebecca is already well known to most of the audience, and Rebecca will describe the format for tonight's program and moderate the discussion. Brian, if you could take it away.
I will.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
Dave. All right. Thank you, Dave. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks especially to all our panel members. Appreciate your involvement here. We had one panel member, Barbara Prowant from Seraph Capital Forum, who was not able to make it tonight, but you can read information about her in your program. And also, I hope that each one of you got a chance to pick up this sheet. That's a summary of the data of the 2013 investment results from all of these angel groups. And thanks very much to Rebecca, who is the one who compiles this data. As you notice, you can download a PDF version of this from my website at fundingquest.com. And also, just one quick note about another event that we didn't have any time to promote here. But 2 weeks from today, there's a lunch meeting of a meetup group called Startup Funding Seattle that'll have a 1 hour, 1.5 hour presentation about, is angel funding right for you? It's really more a basic angel funding 101. I'm leading that. You can check that out. It's a meetup group called Startup Funding Seattle, and it's free. So again, thanks for the panel for being here. And like Dave said, Rebecca doesn't need a lot of introduction, but I want to say a few words about her. To say, I have worked with Rebecca for at least over 10 years, I'm sure, in the startup community. And if you don't know Rebecca, I really encourage you to get to know her, because she is a great connector and a great supporter of entrepreneur efforts here in the Seattle area. So with no further ado, Rebecca Lovell. Thank you.
All right. I'm not that old. Yeah. It's been like 8 years. All right. Well, I want to first thank all of you for fighting traffic and the elements and taking time out of your busy startup lives to be with us tonight. So cheers to you. I also want to applaud you because so many of you in the audience have entered on this crazy wild ride called entrepreneurship. And just to set the stage a little bit, those of you, I think it was almost a majority in the room here, are thinking about seeking angel funding. If you look at the United States as a whole, about every year, 600,000 new businesses are created. And some 5% of them, by a wild stretch of the imagination, actually successfully get angel funding. And then only 0.5% of the total get venture capital funding. So that might sound bleak. It's certainly not for the faint of heart. But the good news is, and what I want to share with you tonight, is there was a wonderful Kaufman study last fall that actually demonstrated that it's new business that has the greatest positive impact on our economy. We know not all startups are going to make it, but the net job creation is one of the most powerful forces we have going for us in society. So why don't you give yourselves a big round of applause? Yay! All right. Awesome. So we have 8 illustrious panelists tonight whom I'll briefly introduce in a moment, and they'll talk a little bit more about themselves. But just to give you a sense of our flight plan for the evening, we are starting a little late, so we're going to make up some time in the air. But I will just kind of tee up some conversation with a few moderated questions. And panelists, this is my public service announcement. Remember that you don't need to feel compelled to answer every single question. So it's as the spirit moves you, if you're really passionate about it, or better yet, if you disagree or have a different perspective than one of the other panelists, that's what makes it really interesting, I think, for all of us. So I will moderate some questions, and I'm really going to try to cut that off around 7:30 so we can open it up to general audience Q&A for the last half hour we have together. Does that sound good? All right. Yes. Okay, let's get fired up. Okay, so I'm just going to start down the line with John Seacrest, very quickly mention everyone by name, and then I'll have you introduce yourself in groups. So wait for further instruction, but you can please feel free to applaud. Let's get into the conversation. There we go. Nice. Thank you for leading it off. Not sure what we're clapping about yet, but I love the enthusiasm. So very first on the end, we have John Seacrest, who runs the Seattle Angel Conference. Welcome, John. All right. My old friend and former colleague, Doug Beavis, representing the Alliance of Angels tonight. Welcome, Doug. All right, we have Lars Johansson, who's on rotating duty, representing the group now known as Element 8. You may have known them previously as the Northwest Energy Angels. Welcome, Lars. Whoop, whoop. And we have Tom Cadavy of WINGS, the biomedical-oriented angel organization. Thank you for joining us yet again, Tom. Woohoo! And next up, we have Nathan McDonald, who heads up the Keiretsu Forum of the Northwest. Thank you, Nathan. Yeah, we're getting our exercise here tonight. Okay, and then we have Andrew Klein representing the Zeno Society. And we also have Emma Landis. Where are you, Emma? There we go. A couple representatives from Zeno tonight. Welcome, Zeno. The chairman of all angel activities in the Seattle area for as long as I can remember, Gary Whitner, who runs the Puget Sound Venture Club. Thank you, Gary. And I'm delighted to introduce a new entrant. I believe that the Thai Angel Group Seattle just had its first anniversary. So joining us here tonight, representing TAGS, as it's affectionately known, is Haresh Ved. Thank you, Haresh. All right. We're getting in the game. This is a participation sport, folks. Okay, so I'd like for each of you to do a slightly longer introduction about yourself, and may I refer you again to this handout, which you can find also online on Brian's website. But what we're going to do, because you already have all this amazing historical and current data, is we're probably not going to talk a lot about the facts and figures. You have those at your fingertips. So, gentlemen, why don't we have you each kind of get up and talk a little bit more about your philosophy, your approach, what makes you special and unique in this vibrant ecosystem. So here's what we're going to do. Let's start with the industry-focused angel groups. And Lars, why don't you kick us off and tell us a little bit about Element 8?
Happy to. Is this on? All right, great. So I'm Lars Johansson. I co-chair the group called now Element 8. When we were started in 2006, we were the first group in North America to be focused exclusively on clean tech. There's a lot of talk about impact investing these days. We like to think we've been doing that since 2006 because in addition to being very passionate about entrepreneurship, our members come to our group because they want to also make an impact towards a cleaner future and a better world. And we think and hope that entrepreneurs that pitch to us get a very receptive audience that understand that business well. It seems to work when you look at the different companies that do apply to us. Last year, we had companies from 15 states and 2 provinces apply to us. So that's maybe a little different than some of the other groups because of that vertical focus. And can you guess what state had the most applicants and presenters?
Oregon.
Oregon's a good guess. Florida. Actually, it's California, closely followed by, less surprising maybe, Washington, Oregon, BC, but several applicants from Massachusetts, and as I said, from a whole slew of different areas. So that's been interesting for us, and the fact that we're also clean tech focused, not just energy, but broadly within clean tech, we've seen everything from wastewater remediation to one-wheeled electric vehicles. We felt that our name, Northwest and Energy, both of those were a little misleading, so we switched to Element 8, which of course is what element? Oxygen, excellent, because we think that well represents what we stand for. Oxygen is a good fuel, it provides life, it's aspirational, and so forth. So I think that's most of what I want to kick it off with as a description of our group. We are, I should maybe also mention that we're not a fund. All the investments are made individually. We do collaborate a lot, as most do, on screening and due diligence, and we meet monthly and see about 20, 25 companies a year.
Nice. Thank you for keeping that short and sweet, and for the geography and periodic table quiz as an extra bonus. So, all right. Next up, we'll have Tom talk about WINGS.
Hi, I'm Tom Cadavy. I'm one of the co-chairs of WINGS, which is a angel group here in town focused on medical devices, diagnostics, life sciences in general, healthcare IT, M-Health. We're interested in seeing all those sorts of deals. We are a group that's 4 years old. We are fronted by the Washington Biotechnology and Biomedical Association. There's a couple of folks over there who kind of help make this whole thing go around for us. We meet 4 times a year. We have a nice dinner over at the Rainier Club, and prior to that is a kind of a long screening process for potential pitchers. We don't charge. Anybody can pitch. It's free. I think dinner is even free. So we do encourage you. I want to point out Dave Kronheiser here, who heads our screening committee. See his face because he's the guy you have to get through to pitch. That's it. Thank you.
Great. All right. Now, don't take it personally, Nathan. We're going to skip you and go to Andrew. So Andrew will be the first of the member organizations to talk about his group. But one interesting flavor, I think, for Zeno is that in addition to your general events, I know you do some very industry-specific focused events. So I thought that might be a good segue. Take it away.
So our group was started by a couple angel investors that were meeting together and talking about deals about 9 or 10 years ago. It had grown to a pretty large organization. We've been focused on getting people together around subjects that interest them. So, for example, we had a group of investors come up and say, we're interested if there's opportunities in the marijuana business. So we actually had a flight of 3 marijuana-based companies that we presented to our investors. And I'm not really sure if they invested or not. We do have a fund. But the investors invest fairly independent. We had a marketplace event, so marketplace companies would come through and pitch. Investors that are interested in marketplace companies would attend. We're doing an all-women's event at the end of next month for women-owned or women CEO-based companies. We actually do a life sciences one toward the latter part of the year. We also try and have some fun events as well. So we had an event last week at El Gaucho where entrepreneurs and investors that were members were invited to come and sort of meet and connect with each other. Our sort of belief is that investments are made over relationships. We depend a lot on the due diligence that Nathan and his team do, but really we believe a lot in putting the right people in the room together and trying to make those deep connections over a glass of wine or over a learning experience.
Wonderful.
About a subject. So
great. All right, let's move on to Nathan McDonald with Keiretsu. And I should point out, I just saw his colleague Nate Doran in the audience. Where are you, Nate? Excellent. So that's another guy.
Right back here, and got a few of our other Keiretsu members here. Good evening, everyone. My name is Nathan McDonald, the president for the Keiretsu Forum for Northwest Region. Want to congratulate all the entrepreneurs that are here as you guys get started on your journeys, or if you're out raising capital. It's a great time to be out raising money. Keiretsu Forum was started 14 years ago down the East Bay. Our founder, Randy Williams, was tired of losing money in angel investing, so he thought it'd be a great idea if he had a lot of people that were a lot smarter than he was to help take a look at opportunities. So what started there has grown to be the largest angel investment group in the world. So we have about 1,400 members across 28 chapters. We have 6 chapters here in the Northwest. We started here in this room in 2005, growing up to about 280 members here in the Northwest region. And we just released our funding results for last year. We did about 35 companies, a little over 20 million. We do a lot of work with all of our companies, 80 to 100 hours of due diligence and produce reports. It's a lot of fun. We do a monthly roadshow, and we have very interactive screening process. About 30 to 50 companies a month apply. We look at 8 to 10 in our deal screening, and then 3 to 4 that make it to the forum. We also syndicate the best deals across our chapter network around the country. So we're very much hands-on, we're very full service, and about 70% of our companies receive funding.
Excellent, excellent. And I think one of the oldest sort of jokes, sadly, in angel investing, if you want to make a small fortune, start with a large one. So I'm glad you're all working on fixing that trend. All right, next up, let's see, who should we go with here? Why don't we have Gary step up to the mic? Gary, Puget Sound Venture Club. Tell us what you're about.
The club's been around since 1985, and our sweet spot is your product's done, you're looking for marketing money. Our procedure is do a phone interview. If we both agree, I'll send you information on how to put together an exec summary with obviously with the stuff we're interested in the summary. We charge $150 to send the summary around. If you get one person, that's the only fee. If you get one person interested, you go to screening on the first Tuesday. If you pass screening, you'd present at a lunch on the second Tuesday. We don't have a fund. Everybody acts for their own account. If you did send around an exec summary but didn't make the cut, you're welcome to send me an update occasionally, like a paragraph or two. If you raise half your round or land a big account. And my one possible advice is for those of you thinking about raising money, and if you're in a position where you're not sure, where you're financially kind of okay and you're not sure if you want to go out and get angels, don't do it. And I'm serious. I'm not trying to be flippant. You know, if you happen to be in that position, just do it yourself and don't go out and raise money because it's a pain.
Yeah, generating revenue is one of the best fundraisers you can have, right? Yeah. All right, why don't we go ahead and pick up Haresh here with TAGS, Thai Angel Group Seattle.
Hi, my name is Haresh Red. I represent Thai Angels Group of Seattle and Thai Seattle. I want to thank Rebecca and the MIT Forum to invite us for this event. I did talk with a few entrepreneurs here, and I did figure out that even after being here for such a long time, nobody really knows that much about Thai. So let me just give you a brief introduction. Thai was launched in 1992 by a bunch of successful entrepreneurs and corporate executives back in 1992 when they had an excellent exit for their company with the sole goal of promoting entrepreneurship in the Indian community. Little did they know that they'd just catch on like wildfire. So today we have more than 60 chapters in 17 countries with about more than 2,500 charter members. Thai Seattle we launched in 2000, and I've been fortunate enough to be one of the charter members since even before it was incepted, since its inception. TAGS is one of the programs of Thai Seattle. The key focus of Thai is to promote entrepreneurship. It's a nonprofit. We had quite a few programs to help entrepreneurs, but then until we bring in the element of capital, I thought the equation wasn't complete. So we decided to bring it in, and last year we actually launched Thai Angels Group of Seattle. The first meeting we had was in May, and immediately followed by our investment, the first investment. And by the end of the year, we had 6 investments, 1.9 million from TAGS members alone. And with working with some co-partners, which I'm a firm believer in, it's more than double that amount. It's quite a simple process, like most of the networks. Entrepreneurs apply through the website. It goes through the screening process. We have a screening committee. Shortlisted companies are invited for presentation. Subsequently, investors form subgroups, interested investors, then they form a due diligence team. They perform the due diligence. At the end of the due diligence, hopefully we conclude the deal with investments, or at least we give actionable feedback to entrepreneurs, at least they can act on. We've been very fortunate. Most of the TAGS members are affluent, successful people in the Seattle area. Bring in a lot of domain expertise and knowledge. To give you an idea, we have 85 active TAGS members, and on an average, it's about 20 years of experience per member. So that makes it almost, 1,700 man-years of experience that TAGS has. Way more than a decade. So this is what is available to all the entrepreneurs once they associate with TAGS. And I'm very honored and humbled that I'm just the face of TAGS and leading this dynamic group of members. Thank you.
Welcome. All right, let's round out the membership groups with Doug Beavis. And Doug, you might want to touch on both your membership activities and talk a little bit about the fund if you can tonight.
Close enough. Where's the guy? Where's the tech guy? Yes? My name is Doug Beavis, and I've been a member of Alliance of Angels since 2000, and I'm also a member of Puget Sound Venture Clubs with Gary. And just talking to Nathan tonight, Nathan and I first met at the Early Stage Investment Forum in 2000, 14 years ago. That's where we first met, so we've been circling for quite a while. AOA has been around since '97, and we've got 100 accredited investors in the organization. We do about roughly 10 million investments a year in 20 companies, 80 million bucks over the last 17 years, and that's about 200 local companies, and we've got 30 exits. One thing we're really conscious of is that the due diligence process, I know, drives you folks absolutely nuts. And we are always looking to ways to simplify and improve what we do, and we appreciate your feedback on that as well. We try to be, we call ourselves entrepreneur friendly, so we undercut Gary's, was it 150, Gary? You tough guy. We're at $95 for a fee, and if you don't make the cut to present to our group, you can come to our pitch clinic, which is the reason I suggest that folks come to our place first, because you get, if you're not ready, you can come to a pitch clinic and get some advice on how to package your stuff and maybe reshape your ideas for a comeback. I will say that, let me speak personally here. I've always been a finance guy, and my resume has always said a finance guy with a marketing personality. And so I always wanted to work for a technologist who could sell, and I wanted to carry that person's briefcase to success. So I have great empathy for what you folks do. I've done road shows, 81 presentations, and 18 city stops. I've been where you are when you're frustrated trying to raise money. But the key point is, for all of these groups here, we all want you to succeed. We all respect what you do, and we can help you to succeed. I think that's probably all I need to mention.
Yeah, unless, did you want to talk about the mechanics of the AOA seed fund?
Yeah, we have a seed fund. Quite frankly, anybody could invest in it, but it's mostly something where angels who aren't investing a large amount over a portfolio can put some of their money into the fund and invest as a group. And that's a $4.4 million fund from about 3 years ago. We're packaging a second fund, but aren't quite there yet. I'm not an investor in that myself, but many people find that something that they like to do. Otherwise, everybody invests separately at AOA, except we are very conscious of having a lead investor to streamline the due diligence and to keep from having redundant questions pop up to you, which I know drives you absolutely nuts. So we're conscious of that, trying to work that problem, and we are also trying to do speed counts for due diligence. I know ActX came through our shop in October, and I wrote my check 3 weeks later, and they raised $1.6 million from AOA. That's not the norm, but that does happen. I will say one last comment. As a survivor of this for 14 years, I always tell my wife what I do, et cetera. We finally decided what I do is polite gambling, but we do it with a smile, and we respect you. Thank you. Yeah, got it.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you, Doug. And before we get to John, I'll just say a few words on behalf of Seraph Capital, since Barb Prowant couldn't be here with us tonight. So if she were here, she would probably say something along the lines of Seraph is unique in that it is an all-women's investment group. But let me take the opportunity right now to dispel the notion that they only invest in women-owned businesses. I think that's about right. And this is usually where Gary says that she's discriminating against male members. But yes, so they very much look at a variety of investment opportunities at early and seed stage, and are known, as are many of the folks up here, for a really wonderful and collaborative coaching process. So sorry Barb couldn't be with us. But next up, we're going to segue into a representative of a fund, and John Seacrest and his group have a really interesting angle. As much as everybody here wants to support entrepreneurs, John's thesis is that really to support this ecosystem, we need to create some new lead angel investors. So talk to us a little bit about the Seattle Angel Conference.
Thank you. So the Seattle Angel Conference is designed for the very early company talking to the very early angel. So we get, so this round, this is the 5th one. The next event is May 22nd. So we have been working on due diligence from March 1st every Tuesday, going through, taking the 42 companies that applied, stack ranking them, sorting them, hearing pitches, and otherwise working through it as a way of teaching angels how to be angel investors. So of the population in general in the United States, 8% of the population is federally qualified to invest in unregistered stock, and yet only 1% actually do. And so if we could get 2% or 3% to invest, we would totally change our ecosystem. And so I would love it if he had 200 members and he had 500 members and that, 10% of all the qualified people invested, but that's not what happens. So most people don't self-identify as angel investors, even though they could be angel investors. So we try to create the smallest, most supportive, most focused process by which you can go through and decide whether I like this thing or not. $5,500 come in, raise a fund, and when they keep mentioning fund, what they mean is we commit the money before we make the decision on what we're investing in. So we agree with 40 people that we together are going to make an investment, and as an event-based fund, we agree that the date that we're going to make the decision is May 22nd, and we form an LLC, and that group of people put nominally $200,000 into whoever the winner is. We do a slow motion investment to try and create more angel investors. Along the way, because we're being very deliberate about our due diligence, trying to get 50 to 100 hours of due diligence in that time period, the companies get a lot of questions that they typically don't have the answer to, and they have to go run off and find the answer and get back. So by the time they're done with us, they have all their materials in the right place, they have a bunch of answers, and we go through every one of the companies and do a debrief with them so that they have something that they can work on that will move them forward. So we like to think that we're way earlier than everybody else, that we try and create a feeder for their startups that are applying to them, but also a feeder for angels who should be joining them. So we aim for 50% of our investors to be new who have never invested before each time. We do this twice a year. So far we've had 85 investors go through the process in the last 2 years. And so hopefully we can produce somewhere around 30 to 50 new angels a year as we go through this process.
That's great. And it's been great to see the growth with every subsequent event. So hopefully you guys have picked up on a couple of themes here. All of these folks are bringing more to the party than just a check. You probably also heard the word due diligence 8 out of 8 times. Does everybody know what that means? I want to make sure we're bringing everyone along. If you hear a term of art, some jargon that doesn't make sense, please call us out, and we'll try to be a little self-policing as well. I do want to get into the due diligence process a little bit, but just again to speak on behalf of another person who isn't here and a very active member of the ecosystem, Chris DeVore, who among a few other partners heads up Founders Co-op, couldn't make it tonight. But if you haven't heard of them, definitely check them out. They raised their first fund in 2008 that was $2.5 million. That went so well that in 2012 they raised $8 million. So they have sort of a different take on the early stage system. They tend to fund about 5% of their deals, and most of them come through referrals. But do, by all means, check them out as a very early stage entrant on the angel investing side. All right, so I think all of you are really great and transparent about sort of the official process, but let's talk about what entrepreneurs really need to do to get funding, okay? And one thing I remember, Doug, I'm not sure if this has changed since the days that you and I worked together at the Alliance of Angels, but we'd slice and dice our stats every which way, and we'd found that by the end of the year, about 65% of the deals that we did came to us through trusted referrals, whether they were actually members themselves or really great attorneys or other members of the ecosystem. I see you nodding your head. I'm glad I'm not talking out of school. But anybody who can chime in on, other than filling out the application and having a whiz-bang executive summary, what's the best way, and possibly mobbing all of you after the end of this event, what is the best way to figure out whom to work with and how to get your attention, how to get in front of you? John, please. Thank you.
So the Seattle Angel Conference doesn't have a lot of referral bias. We take everybody in because we would like to have a range of people coming in, and we're going to only pick one. And so it's sort of the early stage, and it's a great place to practice and to get ready. And then hopefully all of these guys come to our conference and see you, and then as a result, you've had a chance to be introduced. So the process of angel investing is a relationship activity, and you need to have relationships with angels. If you don't have dozens of angels in your personal network, you need to visit with them. Where are you going to find them in public? In general, it's hard to find them in public because they don't walk around with signs. And so the Angel Conference is one of those places to do that.
Anyone else? Different perspective on how to get the attention of an angel group?
I'll go,
Nathan.
Rebecca. So when you think about raising capital, you think about investor relations, you need to have a plan to raise capital. And so you need to market your business, you need to market your company, you need to build your team with people who have credibility with your customers. So that means people who built and sold companies that have returned capital to investors. So if you're a first-time entrepreneur especially, it's even that much more important to surround yourself with people who've been successful. So you want to start with the network you've got, the area of expertise you have, but then you want to try and fill in as many places as you can and really build a team approach to your fundraising efforts. And you want to try and create a lot of potential candidates because you're going to burn through a lot of them until you get to the point where you figure out what you really need to say, how you need to say it, how it needs to go. You're going to learn a lot through the process. So the biggest thing the companies fail raising capital is that they just don't have enough people to talk to, and they don't take the feedback, they don't improve, and they give up too soon. So if you can create an opportunity to meet a lot of people and get a lot of feedback and internalize that quicker, you're going to get to funding faster.
So you're managing a sales funnel and along the way getting used to hearing no quite a lot, I imagine. Yeah, Doug.
Let me just throw a couple things in. Many of you met Jane Parks from Julep.
Mm-hmm.
I told her when she came through, I say, I don't do real estate deals, but I said, go to every angel group in town, and I recommend to all of you, go to all of these folks. These people want to meet you. They want to see you. You don't have an entree from a lawyer or blah, blah, blah. They want to see you. So go to all of them in town, and I told Jane, even if they don't invest in your deal now, you're a good presenter. You got a full life ahead. You will meet these people again at a later date, and you want them to already know you. So for any of you under 60, a lot of you here, go to all these people. Last comment is, again, I wanted to always work for technologists who could sell. You may not be an extrovert, but you got to act like one, okay? And as I tell folks, even Johnny Carson got it done. He was shy as hell for his whole life, and he stepped out to the red line 5 nights a week. You can too.
Gary, you look like you're itching. Contribute.
I'm still listening to what Doug said here. So we see a lot of deals where you got a couple of techies and they got an idea, and nobody knows how to sell in that team. That just doesn't work. You've got to get, if you're a couple of techies sitting out there and you got an idea, you got to get your sales guy on board with you immediately to help you develop the product. Because nothing happens in the world until somebody sells something, and you all know that. And just developing a great product just doesn't work. You got to know how to sell it. And the other comment I would make about one of the things that I see over the years, and I've done this a while, is I run across too many people that don't know how to listen. They do not know how to listen, and that's a complete turnoff.
Great. All right. So that's an excellent segue into sort of talking a little bit more about some of the attributes that you look for in your investment deals. I really quickly, though, wanted to key off of a comment that Doug made around really selling it. And I think that as much as you have to act like an extrovert, I would also sort of have the caveat that you need to be authentic and be yourself. You know, people are going to invest in you and invest in the team, but just turn it up to 11, be yourself plus 10%. Would be one piece of advice that I would have, and certainly that domain expertise is going to help you as well. So let's get some new voices into the conversation and talk a little bit about what are those winning qualities that you look for in a founding team as you're getting ready to back them. Go for it, Andrew.
Well, so one of the first things is I think that Gary sort of mentioned it is when you meet an entrepreneur that knows everything, it's a big turnoff, right? So, but when you meet an entrepreneur that you give them a suggestion, they do it and they come back and they've actually taken your suggestion into consideration and they've either proved you right or proved you wrong, it's really awesome to see. And when I look at a company, I look for kind of 3 pillars. I look for an operations guy, so like your CTO. I look for a marketing sales guy, and I look for someone that deals with the accounting and finance. So if you have those sort of 3 pillars of a team, I think it makes it pretty attractive because you have that whole team there, and you can really be successful if you get the money. So.
And I know that all of you mean guy in a non-gender specific kind of way. So
guy,
just help
guy
you out
or
with that
gal.
a little bit. Yeah.
Guy or gal.
That's right. So I think you should know who you don't have on the team, and be very transparent about that. And I think you will generate, with any investor and an angel investor, you know, I don't have my sales guy or I don't have my finance guy. I'm a technology guy and I'm taking it this far forward and we're going to look for a CEO. You know, that shows a maturity on the part of a founder that I think people very, very much appreciate. So just acknowledge that you don't have that gal, and I think that's a nice piece of advice. So.
Great. Anybody else? Harish?
I think it's very important to have complementing skill sets to complete your team. It's very important that each and every aspect of the business has to take off, not just the technology, not just the product, whatever it is. And sales is key. Everyone has to sell. The other important thing I think is people should believe in themselves, you know, because when you go out to meet all these people, the more you meet, the better it is, because every pitch you make makes you that much better. But there'll be people and they'll throw curveballs at you, so you should not give up. You should have confidence in yourself. You should believe in that yourself. And you have to, first of all, convince yourself that this is the best thing ever to fix a certain problem. Only if you're convinced yourself can you convince someone else and believe in you.
Right.
So
and
that's very important.
If Christopher were here, I've heard him say he likes to invest in entrepreneurs who are just this short of crazy, right? I mean, you have to be so driven and that you are doing what you are best in the world at, and you can't not pursue this dream. So, Gary.
One more thing to think about. You should bring a CFO part-time in earlier than you were planning. So you're probably thinking in year 2 and you got X revenue, you're going to get some kind of part-time help there. You got to bring them in earlier. So plan on bringing in a part-time CFO earlier than your original thinking.
So I'm hearing some do's and don'ts here, and it almost might seem like conflicting information, and that there has been this theme around investors enjoying working with coachable entrepreneurs, and you have to listen and respond to feedback, but that at the same time, you're looking for confidence and passion. I think they can both be true. And one thing that, you know, as you go from group to group and mentor to mentor, you can experience mentor whiplash. Everybody's going to have an opinion about what you're doing. And I think what's incumbent upon you is to listen to 100% of the advice, probably ignore 95% of it. But you've got to have your own compass as you're making your way through market validation and the advice that you're getting from folks like all of us. So it's my own 2 cents, little public service announcement. No, you guys are all geniuses. Listen to everything they say. The other 95%, I'm not so sure. All right. So we started talking about, you know, kind of what you look for in entrepreneurs, some of these human qualities, and I'm sure that each of you are, as you described, investing in different stages of the business. But if we're going to set about this, as I think most people in the room are planning to seek funding, other than Doug, who wrote a check in 3 weeks, hats off to you, how much time should these folks realistically plan to, you know, start and finish their fundraising and getting that check in the bank? How long is it really going to take?
We're the easiest to know the answer to that question because you know what date we're going to pick. Everybody else has a random amount, and that random amount might be between 3 weeks and 9 months. And so if you aren't planning at least 9 months of this dance, you're probably under planning.
Anyone else want to defend themselves? It's a legitimately, you know, long and intensive process. Andrew?
So I'm fairly new to Xeno Society, but I've gone back and said, what do we like to invest in? What do we not like to invest in? What gets funded fast? What takes forever? And one of the companies, there was a wine entrepreneur that had a wine business that pitched. And at one of our forum events, by the end of the night, they had an $850,000 check
Was
from
everyone
one of our
drinking
investors.
wine at your event? Is that the secret?
Well, Kathy told me not to talk about that, but we do have really fun events. So we had an investor, an individual investor, wrote an $850,000 check by the end of this pitch night. Another example that people may have heard of is Bacon Salt. Bacon Salt came to us in the early days, and they pitched for 3 years until they got a check. Because they'd pitch and they weren't quite there, they needed to meet another milestone, and after working with the investors and getting some coaching, they ended up getting funded, and now they're on Jimmy Kimmel and Everything Tastes Like Bacon. And I'm actually a vegetarian, so.
It's kosher and vegetarian, though, so you're in luck.
Actually, it is, yeah.
There you go.
So yeah, so for us, it's a long time.
Now, Nathan, at Kretzu, I think you guys are really known for having a pretty extensive and professionally managed due diligence process. That, in addition to the syndication that you do with deals, can you tell us a little bit about that time frame?
Yeah, so all of our members individually invest, so they can write a check at any time, and often companies have received checks from our members before they get into our deal flow process, and so. But as you work through the screening, through the forum, it's usually 3 to 6 weeks in terms of the due diligence process. It can take longer. It just depends on how organized the company is and how robust the due diligence team is. But we come out of that with a report. It's usually, 60 to, in some cases, 250 pages. But with that report, you can then go to any other angel group or any other Kretzu Forum chapter and raise capital, and your due diligence burden at that point is a matter of answering more questions typically. So instead of having to redo all the due diligence, we try and document the due diligence, try and build as high quality of a diligence team we can one time, and then syndicate that deal flow. And we often bring in members from other angel groups or other angels that are looking at the company, and it's a very open source due diligence process. We do our due diligence training every month, and we trained about 800 people on our process over the last 2.5 years. So if you're interested in learning how due diligence is done on a collaborative basis, feel free to come to our class every month.
Lars, thank you.
Yeah, add a few thoughts to this. Due diligence can take, again, anything from just a couple of weeks if you already have terms established, other investors, maybe investors from your group that are already invested. But realistically, it's going to take longer. It's going to take probably a couple of months, maybe more. But what you can do is, to shorten that process, is make sure that you have all your ducks in a row. Make sure you have a good due diligence packet, make it available through Dropbox or whatever system you want to use to share that information. Be open and be ready, lined up with customer references, partner references, all kinds. Just make it really easy for the angels to go through and look through that.
What else do they need besides customer and partner references? I think it'd be great if we could get a little cheat sheet on what to prepare to expedite that process.
Yeah, I think there even are public forums where people provide sort of their due diligence checklists.
You have a favorite one?
Both
Anybody?
ACA and a few others have lists like that. But I was also going to add that flip side of that is from our side, I think it's fair to say that for all angel groups, one of the hardest things is to get from the really nice luncheon or dinner or whatever you have to identify a deal lead and identify a team of members that are going to say, oh, this was a really nice dinner, but now I'm actually going to start working. I'm going to have to look into what these companies do. I'm going to have to do due diligence. So that's, I think, true across the board. What we've done on our side is we pre-book. We typically have our meetings on a Thursday, and we pre-book the next Wednesday, an hour and a half. Is already scheduled for the 3 presenting companies, so that they know they need to make a good enough presentation, not to answer every question, but to make a really good impression and get a lot of people to come to the 1.5-hour meeting. And there we really try hard. We work with interns. We've had really good interns over the years, including Nate here. And they help with the process, but then we really try to identify deal leads and people to work on different tasks as part of the due diligence process.
Okay, great. And then just really quickly, you referenced ACA. So for those of you who don't know, that is the Angel Capital Association. So do check them out and look for some of their templates. And then I think I saw Haresh and then Tom. Were you? Yeah?
Yeah, I just want to say that there are 2 things very important with the whole process and the amount of time it takes. Typically, it's the preparedness on the entrepreneur's side as well, the company's side, how prepared, how meticulously they've kept records of whatever they've done. They should already have an idea of what would be expected in a typical due diligence. So that may shorten the process quite a bit. Secondly, if they have already gotten the due diligence done from one of the groups, it's highly likely that many groups share due diligence. I typically share it with Kretzu, but I like to summarize their reports because they're too long. Nobody really reads the whole thing. So, but it helps. It's a good start. Third thing I'd like to say is timing of things is also important in the whole closing process. I mean, it depends on how timely you pitch to a certain group, what kind of members have been in the audience. And that really triggers it. If there are key leaders, and every group has some key leaders and investors, if they tend to take a lead, then things tend to run much faster and smoother in terms of closing the deals.
Tom?
And that's exactly what I wanted to echo, is that the you can speed up your due diligence and the whole investment process if you can find a good lead angel. Not all angels can lead. Not all angels are equal in capability, just like all entrepreneurs. So, you know, after you've pitched and you're surrounded, hopefully, with people who are interested in investing, see if you can pick out that lead, or talk to some of the people who are, you know, organizing the angel group, and they can tell you who in that group can help lead your deal.
Great. John?
So from the angel due diligence point of view, there are thousands of things that people can ask you, and you end up with this great big pile. But it comes down to two pieces of information for us: evidence that your team can execute, make goals, and achieve those goals, and then evidence that there's a market big enough and that that market cares about you, and some mechanism by which we can validate what you said about those things. So if you could get those two things done in a way that we can clearly understand that, then the opportunity to move forward goes much faster.
Great. So I think we've, oh, Doug, go ahead.
Throwing
Are you
out more
disagreeing
ideas.
with somebody?
No. Hell, with these guys?
This better be good. Go ahead.
I'll always remember from my sales management class in business school, the professor's concept was called the presumptive close. You want to ask, do you want to invest $50,000 or $100,000? Either answer you're happy with. You do not ask them, do you want to invest or not? Okay? So either answer you get is a winner, so the presumptive close. Also, each angel group has a sales funnel, a funnel for screening, and any good sales and marketing person has a funnel for customers. You need to have a funnel for the investors, and keep track of a grid sheet. Keep track of when you contacted them as well, and follow up. To me, I appreciate polite persistence, which is really different from being pushy. So polite persistence, and sometimes over months, for me is I find is acceptable and works. And lastly, one guy once said, and I don't take calls over the transom. I only invest through the venture funds because my wife would throw me out if I spent too much time on this. It's quite time consuming. But so I cut this guy off, and I told him, make it clear, I wasn't going to be able to invest for reasons X or Y. He said, "Thank you. That's the second best answer, is a quick no." Okay? So be persistent and polite, keep a grid and follow up, but qualify your buyers and don't waste your time if they're not interested at all. Move on.
Great. All right, so we've talked a little bit about good and bad angels. I think you referred to that, Tom, and I want to get into what these relationships look like post-investment. But before we leave this topic of sort of how to prepare to pitch, get all your due diligence ducks in a row, let's do a real quick lightning round of what is the worst mistake somebody can make in pitching. My own personal pet peeve is telling me they have no competition. That's a real deal killer for me. What does that mean if you have no competition? Anyone? There's no market, or you haven't done any homework. Both are bad. So be a little more imaginative. All right, pet peeves and pitches, what not to do, real quick.
The key thing to me when I hear a pitch is, especially when you have a big group, we typically have 70, 80 people there, you got to be really clear throughout. If you lose the audience on one slide, there's something really confusing, you're on one or two slides down the road, they're still thinking about what was that? So really try to keep it really simple. Remember, you're really just trying to get people to the due diligence meeting.
Great. Pet peeves? John?
For me, I think the thing that annoys me the most is when somebody's selling me a hope and a dream with no evidence and just wants to sell the hell out of the room, and they couldn't get the company to take 2 steps if they tried. And so I really want someone who's competent to demonstrate his competence, not to sell me on a dream.
Mm-hmm. Trust is really difficult to establish, but very easy to lose. And so if you're spinning and obfuscating from the get-go, I know we've walked away from deals where we felt like the wool was being pulled over our eyes. So great point. Tell the truth. Good. Anyone else?
I'll throw in one. The one thing I really hate to see is last-minute substitutions of presenters trying to present their companies. These second presenters are not as good as the first one. They really do a disservice to the whole fundraising process. I'd rather advise people not to or cancel the presentation instead of sending a substitute who is not as competent.
Great. Any other pitfalls? pitfalls or pieces of advice, Nathan?
Couple things. Less is more in terms of your technology description and product description. We're more interested in the market. Understand your financials, or make sure the person presenting understands the financials, and also understand your deal terms and your structure, because that's going to tell us a lot very quickly at the sophistication of the team.
Right. Doug.
I can't resist keeping it simple. A limerick from business school. So tell me quick, so tell me true, or else, my friend, be gone with you. Less how this product came to be, more what the darn thing does for me.
Wow, I can't follow that.
Hard to top that. Tom, give it a shot.
I would suggest no limericks in your presentation. Be prepared. Be prepared. I like to do the 5-question thing, and just ask 5 questions and see how deep the knowledge really is. Did this person really know the domain? I kind of like to hear about the technology and the product a little bit, but I do like the marketing as well. So.
And I'll tell you, appendix slides can be your best friend in Q&A, right? Doing your homework, even if you don't have time in your 5 or 8 or 10-minute pitch. Great to have those at your fingertips and extra slides at the end. Gary, you're inspired?
Yeah, you inspire me. Yes. Well, there's a big list. Nathan's comments about don't spend the whole time getting too techie about your product is really a good point. But my idea, my thing would be, some guy's got a high valuation. So where did you get that number? Well, my attorney gave it to me, and then I say, "Are you kidding me?" I said, "Why don't you ask your attorney his firm to fund this?" And I'm being a little bit flippant, but that just doesn't sell.
Gary is the godfather of angel investing, if I mentioned that. All right. Did you want to chime in, or we can move on to the next topic? All right.
I actually want to make one point. I think, to me at least, there's only one way of saying it's a good pitch. Everything else might fall in bad. So I have this principle of 4 W's. Why, what, who. So why are they doing it? What are they doing it? Who are they doing it for? And who is doing it? If they cannot answer that in the pitch, if they don't cover that, then it's probably already lost interest.
All right, so I think
we can get into the details later about how and whatnot.
Yeah, and I think a couple themes are coming out here. One, that first pitch is a first date. There's much more that will happen thereafter. And 2, keep it simple. And I think that for all of us who are spending our days and nights and weekends and months and years on this startup, nobody is going to know more about your business than you do. And so it is incumbent upon you to simplify and remember to avoid jargon, to get too much in the weeds. And some advice that I've heard is explain your business. Again, no offense to the geniuses on this panel, but explain your business as if you're talking to a really smart ninth grader, right? It's to a general audience. Try to avoid, getting too in the weeds with the nuts and bolts, but show how it works versus, just talking about it incessantly. All right, let's talk about what happens, whether it's 3 weeks or 9 months that it takes you to get the check from one of these groups. What happens next? What is your role as an angel investor once this deal is funded? I'm sure you each have different answers. Who's first to all right, John.
So I see the money from an angel group as being your dowry for getting married for 12 years. And it's got to be enough money to get their attention and manage that attention. So if we assume in the angel conference we have 40 investors, there's the deal lead. Josh, raise your hand. Josh is the SAC 5 manager for this round. It's his job to be connected to the winner. And so hopefully those 40 people will be called upon over the 12-year period of our expected investment to solve particular problems. A marketing guy will get pulled in on a marketing problem, a technical problem solved by a technical guy, whatever that set of relationships are, so that you can get attention, open up your Rolodex, make introductions, tell the social media story, Twitter like crazy about the company when needed. Those kinds of things ought to be happening out of the angel group, and it's the deal lead, the manager of the LLC, who has that responsibility each time we make an investment.
Great, thanks. Different take on the post-investment role of angels. Lars?
Yeah, there can certainly be formal roles like board seats and advisory board roles and so forth, but you always hear a lot about the mentoring and the help connecting to potential customers, potential partners, and potential follow-on investors. And although Rob Wiltbank would say it's the company's job to raise their money, I think the investors can really help with some of those connections, those Rolodexes that you talked about, although nobody uses a Rolodex these days, I guess. But really help you, because it's in their interests too. If you do this well, you're really well aligned. You can be much better aligned as entrepreneurs and angel investors than potentially those two with a later stage VC, depending on who you sort of jump in with. And I think you can really use their advice if and when you get to that point.
Yeah. And you mentioned, formal roles like the board, and one of my favorite expressions around board members is their job is to be noses in but fingers out, right? So meaning they ask these nosy questions about the business. That's sort of how they provide their expertise. Certainly, as these guys said, open up their Rolodex as requested, but they're keeping their fingers out of the management pie. Even though this entity owns a piece of your business, you're still responsible for the day-to-day operations, and that's, I think, one litmus test as you're doing this sort of two-way street of dating all of these angel groups. You want to find out how they're going to behave in the relationship, which, as John said, could be 12 years before that exit opportunity. Great.
All right,
Haresh.
I'll give it a shot. I think, at least for us, angel investing is an interesting business. Typically, you would expect you'd give money to someone and get work done by them. But in our case, the work actually begins after we write the check. Not only do we try and get on the advisory board or a board, but that's when we start working with the entrepreneurs, not meddling, as Rebecca said, not running the company, but at least opening up the doors for that first sales pitch, that first partnership with any of the companies. We have a lot of experience and expertise. That's what we end up doing. And if we, in fact, don't see that if we cannot add value to an investment, then we might possibly even pass that investment. But if we see that we can really do something, that's when we get involved and engaged with the company.
Mm-hmm. Any of you spend time recruiting? I mean, when you think about the stage of these companies, of these early stage companies, I don't know that any of them has a fully complete management team or team. So is that one way that you open your Rolodex, to kind of look at your stable of talent and try to send them in the direction of your portfolio company?
So our very first investment was in Illumigare, and one of the sters bailed from Microsoft about 3 months later and is now the president of Illumigare. So we've had that happen, and not what I'm expecting, but it does happen.
Mm-hmm. Great.
So I'm going to add one more thing. I'm going to reemphasize, you really should stay in contact with your investors. A lot of our investors I've seen have sort of invested. They're really busy. They're doing it half for fun, half to make money. And they don't follow up, and they don't give help to the entrepreneurs because they figure the entrepreneur's smart. They got everything taken care of. Mm-hmm. And the entrepreneur really, really should ask to open that Rolodex. Mm-hmm. The other thing is, I think that we all kind of mentioned, we like to see deals from people we know, like our attorney introduces us to an entrepreneur, our, an accountant would introduce us, or I'd get a connection from Nathan. But I think that if you're raising another round, a Series A, after getting seed, your investors can introduce you to those VCs. Because I know that I smoke cigars with people at Ignition, and I've met. I think everyone here knows people at the big VC funds between here, San Francisco, Chicago, and to maintain that relationship and maintain being a rock star startup after getting funded will make that Series A initial introduction way easier.
Well, maybe we can talk a little bit about what kind of communication you expect from your portfolio companies. Because in my mind, if you are only telling your investors when you have bad news, you're setting yourself up for failure. So what kind of communications do you expect? How often? Anyone?
So we don't usually take a board seat. We want advisory or observer role, but we're expecting that the deal lead is getting board minutes, and that at least quarterly and preferably monthly, something's coming down the pike telling us what they're doing, and that there's some kind of report that's actionable that gives us something to do.
Nathan.
Good investor relation communication, you either do it or you don't. I haven't seen a lot of in between. People either care and they communicate and they take the time to do it, or they don't. And the first due diligence question the next investors have when they call the old investors is, what's going on. If the investors say, yep, they kept us informed, things are going great, I'm reinvesting in the company, then everything goes smoothly. If they say, I'm not sure, maybe you probably know more than I do, what's happened the last 18 months, that's not a good answer. So if you want to do yourself a favor, it's hard enough, as Gary said, to raise capital to begin with. When you get an investor on board, keep them up to speed. They're going to be the first call for the next investors coming in, and make sure you got a couple good reference investors ready to go as you're continuing to raise money.
Great.
Yeah, this is actually a pet peeve of mine. Way too many entrepreneurs, after they've gotten the investment, go silent. And there's really no excuse for that. I mean, on a monthly, at least quarterly basis, just doesn't have to be more than an email. I don't even have to scroll. Good, bad, ugly. And you keep the investor informed, ups, downs. They know where you're at. If things start going bad and they come back, I can't make payroll, you know what's been going on. If they come back and have told you nothing and say they can't make payroll, good luck with that payroll and make sure you pay the tax man. So.
No, I think it is critically important to let your investors know what is going on, because this is a small town, people talk. If somebody talks to these investors, hey, have you invested in this company, what's happening? And God help you, if the investor says, I don't know what's going on. It's very tough for the business. So it is extremely important. I think it is very important to keep them informed, but if there is any trouble or help required, that's the first thing they should do on a regular basis. So we actually pick up the phone, talk with all our investment companies at least once in a couple of weeks if we don't hear from them. And we don't expect a written report every month or something, but if there's something that is important, we need to know how we can help.
So at Wings, people generally invest, on their own. It's very much an ad hoc sort of thing. But if you've gotten an investment from Wings, we're pretty proud of you, quite frankly, and we're going to invite you back. So it's really an opportunity again to pitch the rest of the angels who didn't invest in the first round. Because you may need another bridge angel kind of round to get you to that first VC round, Series A kind of thing that you're going to do. So take care of the angel group that provided you with the members who actually did invest. So.
Okay. Now, Doug.
A couple quick things. I never ask for anything special from a CEO because I respect so much what they do and what they have to do. I don't want to distract them. But at the same time, what they're all saying is really on target to communicate with them, and it can be a summary of what is on your mind and what you're thinking of that you just put in a different form. Secondly, business cards may be legacy technology, and maybe it's e-cards, but save every business card or e-card. I went through about 35 years of cards about a month ago, kind of a Gestalt cleansing experience. I threw away about 2,000 or 3,000 business cards because I'm getting old and maybe the cards aren't relevant. Maybe I'm not relevant. But save every card because this is a really small town and it's a really friendly town. You cannot do what you're doing here in Dubuque. And it's harder than hell to do what you're doing in Boston or New York because those are really rough towns. I've been on business there. I've lived there. So it's a friendly town. Deals are done on a handshake. The people you meet this year, you'll run into them for sure in the next 2 to 4 years in this town. So keep those cards and build those relationships.
Awesome. All right, I think we're going to shift gears one last time before we open it up to audience Q&A. There are really few better people in the community to keep you guys informed of trends that they're seeing in investing in the regulatory environment. And I think we've all been at least watching from the sidelines some of the legislation around crowdfunding. I'm hoping that I'm seeing some nodding heads. Excellent. I've spoken with a few of you ahead of time. I'd love to get your sort of interpretation of what it all means, both for entrepreneurs seeking funding and maybe how you'll operate as groups in the future. John.
So there's two things that have changed in the last year that are really worth paying attention to. One is that the Jobs Act at the federal level has made some fundamental changes. And while it claims that it has a crowdfunding component, it has a dysfunctional one that at least I'm ignoring. I assume some other people are too. But the important part about the Jobs Act is the 506B versus 506C, private placement versus general solicitation. And the fact that you can do general solicitation and you can essentially crowdfund angels is very interesting, and there's some opportunities there that I think some people are going to start taking advantage of. I think that'll shift the conversation. There are two groups Funders Club and Angel List, which got letters of no action from the SEC for their behavior, which are really close and in my mind maybe a little bit past the line that they had drawn. And so now it's possible to go to Angel List, find a bunch of companies and invest $1,000 and it takes you 30 minutes and you're done. Something you couldn't have done before. So that's tremendously different in terms of access to both people and money. The second thing is that we just passed House Bill 2023 in Washington, which is crowdfunding for Washington state businesses and angels. So, or anyone in the state can invest in a company. Unfortunately, because I'm in a hurry, they set some dates in that mean that probably it's going to take a year before that process of anybody involved can invest. So random people in Washington investing in Washington companies probably won't happen for a year. That's my guess. But that's very interesting. It'll change the conversation tremendously. And even though we have lawyers that say don't ever have a non-accredited person in an investment, that conversation's going to heat up over the next 2 years. And I think that there's some fundamental shifts. The number of businesses funded should change dramatically.
Let me jump in really quick. I should have defined terms a little bit. I saw some head nods, but I want to make sure that everybody sort of gets the context of this conversation. So, back in the old days, not that long ago, the idea was that if you're pitching your business to investors, they need to be accredited. So kind of the rough and tumble way is they need to be worth $1 million, essentially. If you are presenting financing terms to folks like me, who maybe don't have that kind of money, it could be considered a general solicitation and a de facto IPO. So you've basically made a public offering, which makes you subject to extraordinarily complicated and expensive SEC filings. So I think that was the impetus behind the original Jobs Act. When the rules came through, it didn't look initially like it was going to be substantively different. You couldn't make these public solicitations. We're still waiting for some of the rules to be passed, but some of this legislation in Washington State is paving the way for true crowdfunding. Just a little bit of background for everybody in the back row. Gary, you had something to say. Yeah? Okay.
I was at the ACA event, the Angel Capital Association event in D.C. last week, and probably at least a third of the panels were on public policy and senators, and Dan Rosen was there from the AOA, who's been very involved in the public policy committee for the AOA, or the ACA the last year or two. So the kind of the consensus among the angel groups across the country was still kind of a wait and see. Most of us haven't done a publicly solicited deal through our groups yet that I've found. We haven't done one that I know of through Kretzu Forum, or that we've really had one here in the Northwest. So it's been kind of a learning exercise for everybody to see where the goalposts are and where the lines are. It definitely got a lot clearer for me listening to the folks from the SEC describe things a little bit more. Definitely, if you're going to raise money, public solicitation, the Funders Club, the Angel List, those kind of mechanisms where they've aggregated online investors is a good way to go. We've looked at it in that probably you want to start with the angel groups and get some due diligence done, get some investment momentum, and then look for those as follow-on syndication funding as I think how things are going to kind of sort out. But even Funders Club, they have not done a public solicitation deal, so they consider all their members of their Funders Club, and so it's not a publicly solicited deal because you have pre-existing relationships with them. So I think the stats that he gave was 9,000 deals that have been done since the crowdfunding public solicitation was possible, and there was only 900 that were 506C, that the Reg D forms that have been filed so far. So it's only, less than 10% certainly that are out there trying to make it happen. So
are you recommending that folks come to organize professional angel groups first and then seek crowdfunding through those mechanisms versus the opposite?
In general, most of the angel groups that I know of won't look at a public solicited deal yet because we just don't know enough about the regulations associated with it. So it's just not transacting. It's something new, different, and so not all investors are comfortable with it. I don't know that attorneys have done a great job of instilling fear into people around this new thing. So we'll see how that works itself out as people become more comfortable with it. There's more deal history out there. We're waiting to see the first few that get done here in Washington. I think the Washington crowdfunding bill is a good way to go. Hopefully that limits our collective liability a bit in terms of trying to get these transactions completed.
Great. Doug and then Andrew?
Yeah.
And then Tom.
Let me be quite blunt. It scares the hell out of me. If you get money from friends and family, you know what friends and family money is, right? They better be damn good friends, because if any of them are not accredited investors and you then raise money from an accredited investor, an A round or whatever, if those friends get unfriendly, they can blow up the company. And the concurrent issue is to date, in the past, it's been the accredited investor's responsibility to sign off to say they are accredited. The legislation, as I understand it, shifts the responsibility to the company and to the directors for that liability. Cover your wallet.
All right. Andrew and then Tom.
So my understanding is that you have to pick one. You can't just like, oh, I'm going to do a little crowdfunding here. I'm going to do a little bit of Rule 506 here. I'm going to public offer there. You got to pick one of the three and do that for at least the whole year. What I would worry about is that if you got a really active guy that only gave you $250 and he wanted to like be in your business every single day and you had an opportunity to sell, but he thought you were the next Facebook and wouldn't let you sell and like derails your deal, like that's what I'd be afraid of for crowdfunding. So I say, you know, I think we mentioned before, the best investment you can get is revenue. And then I would say after revenue, like one investor or you know, a small number of large amounts. So,
Tom and then Lars.
So I'm actually kind of excited about it, quite frankly. Coming from the medical device world, which is a little stodgy, that might be hard to swallow. But I was just on the Angel MD site this week, and I thought these guys have done a really professional job of kind of setting up a crowdfunding site and being able to do diligence. And what's kind of neat about it is that this is doctors, you know, across the United States and globally that are nominally investors, and it's a fabulous way to find out if you've got an idea that has legs, you know, in New York City as well as Seattle and Dallas, and you know, maybe you know, in London and Berlin as well. You know, be careful. Everybody up here is a little wringing their hands over it, but it's pretty nice.
Lars, thank you.
Yeah, overall, I think it's a good concept, can hopefully provide more financing. We have stuck with the traditional rules. We don't encourage companies to do general solicitation. I obviously don't provide any advice on this. You should go talk to lawyers. But as Doug pointed out, if you do general solicitation, all your investors must be accredited. If you follow the traditional rules, you can have up to 35 non-accredited friend and family investors. And if you do general solicitation, it's also my understanding that the burden switches to you, the entrepreneur, to verify the accreditation status. So looking for everybody's tax returns or something like that, which probably wouldn't be too popular.
Great. And I do want to make a really quick distinction between the kind of true crowdfunding that we're talking about here and sites like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, which are casually referred to as crowdfunding, but those backers don't own a piece of equity in your business the way those platforms are structured today. And where I would recommend you use them is essentially you're getting paid for customer validation. You have people paying you to be beta users, and they're not messing up your cap table or putting you at risk in terms of SEC violations. So there are pros and cons to getting crowdfunding. It's a great way to learn whether or not people out there are willing and able to pay for your product, because it turns out that's what business is about. But it does, you know, take its toll in terms of your time managing, you know, that $250 pledge backer and all of the marketing that goes with it. But do remember that that is separate from the crowdfunding legislation that we're talking about. So I have actually accomplished my goal of getting you guys to disagree a little bit. Yes. So now that means that maybe barring a final comment from John, I do want to open it up to Q&A. So that is coming. Get your hands ready to throw them in the air. John.
So if you decide that you're going to do general solicitation and use Angel List, the key to that is much like Kickstarter, where you really need to have some anchor that does the social validation that carries it forward. It's sort of like getting 50% of your donations in before you actually go ask for donations so that you get momentum. And without that momentum, none of these mechanisms work.
Great. Thank you. Harish, did you have a quick?
Yeah, I actually just wanted to chip in something. It's a very complicated process. Even lawyers don't share much with you, but there are
and they disagree
two issues.
with each other. They can't agree.
Federal level and the state level. At federal level, you actually need to have accreditation done by either the entrepreneurs themselves, which investors may not like. So there are companies now out there, Seed Invest is one of them, Investor Lockbox, where people can actually go and get the accreditation certificate. I don't want to get into too many details, but at the state level, they are trying to avoid all that formalities by opening it up for up to $1 million of investment. You can even get it from friends, family kind of investments without being accredited investors, or I believe it's what, $2,000 or $3,000 and 5% of your
Whichever is lower.
income, or 10% of net income, whichever is lower.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah.
And one other thing for entrepreneurs, you have to be extra careful with all or anything you put on your websites or anything, because I was just recently told by our lawyers that even if you put in that, we are currently seeking funding for Series A, that's it, that holds you liable. So try and avoid putting anything like that anywhere in your advertisements, websites, publications, anything you have. And then you might be okay. But still, please talk with the lawyers. I am not one.
Great. All right, folks. So you've heard a lot from these gentlemen up here about how much due diligence they're going to do on your companies. This is your chance to kick the tires and turn the tables a little bit. It's a really rare opportunity we have in the next 23 minutes or so to get your question answered. So do we want to distribute the mics? Can we get... All right.
Because we have so many people, we thought we would change the balance of power on the mics and let them have it. So we'd ask if you would please go to the mic rather than having the mic come to you. And we could just sort of line up and ask questions.
Very good. All right, let's tee it up behind. Chris?
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you everyone on the panel. It's one of my favorite events of the year is to come and hear from all of you. And I'm going to ask a question I think I asked 2 years ago, but I'm going to ask it again because the answer changes. And that is, if I'm an entrepreneur coming to you seeking investment, what are the guidelines I should consider with my attorney on the vehicle in which you're going to do the investing? Common stock, convertible note, preferred stock, do's and don'ts, guidelines, things that you look for, things that would kill the deal. And I know John's answer already, but maybe everyone else doesn't. So thank you, John.
The Seattle Angel Conference starts with the convertible note, and sometimes we do stock direct deals, but mostly convertible note.
We prefer preferred equity, so equity rounds. We certainly do look at convertible notes, and as long as that convertible note has some visibility into what it might actually convert into at some point, i.e. the round that would follow it. And in that case, as long as there's reasonable discounts and caps on it so that it protects your earlier investment, sort of warrants the bigger risk that you take earlier on.
Well, we don't do common. We do convertible notes with a cap. We do preferred. The things we look for, are you raising enough money to last you 1 year? Because we don't want the CEO spending all his time raising money.
Or her time.
Pardon me?
Sorry, or her time, either. I couldn't resist.
I was invited to a group, and I was screening like 8 companies going through training, and she was my partner on the panel, and I learned more from her than I did from anybody else. Anyway, so and I get a chance to talk about my favorite subject. If you walk in with a ridiculous but we like the deal, here's what we're going to say to you. Okay, you take half your money and put it in escrow, half your shares. And if we get 10 times our earning exit, if we get an exit 10 times in 5 years, you can keep your shares. If we don't get it, your shares disappear. And that's how we handle the valuation issue.
Doug?
How's that worked out, Gary?
He's got a good question. How does it work out? But one thing it does, you find out, is this guy for real? Is this entrepreneur for real? Because if he really believes in it, he's going to do it, right? And if he doesn't, he's not going to do it. And if he's not going to do it, see you later. And we haven't been around long enough to see where we did one to know what happens. We just started this a few years ago, by the way.
All right, Doug.
Bridge to nowhere was the descriptor of notes 5 years ago. Now notes are more acceptable with a cap, as Gary expressed. And if you go to the Alliance of Angels website, we have a standard down the middle of the fairway bridge note language that we recommend. About 4 or 5 years ago, we put together a preferred Series A preferred set of documents, and I think it's $5,000 is what most of the blue chip law firms in town will do an A round for you off of our standard down the middle of the fairway documents. We ran it by all the key law firms in town and got the consensus. And by the way, they don't want to spend $15,000 for you for a set of A round notes because they're not making money on that. They can still have a teaser relationship with you for $5,000. You're happy with our template. Go to the website.
Anyone else? Next question?
Okay, so first, can we differentiate crowd investing versus crowdfunding? Can we call it crowd investing? Is that appropriate?
Perfect.
Okay. So you all said how you felt about maybe seeking around with someone who had done crowd investing. Similarly, B Corps, benefit corporations, there's the B Corp certification, but there's also the legal structure. Forgive me, I just moved to Washington. I think here it's a purpose corporation. Yeah, so I'd love to hear your theories on investing in that kind of legal structure.
Well, there's a whole group at the Hub that's what they do. We have an impact investment forum coming up in May where we're talking about investing in companies for dual purpose for investors and philanthropists and angels, trying to further that. So it's still kind of, again, a frontier area. We believe that there's philanthropists out there that would like to do impact investing. We're seeing if we can flush them out and get them to invest in companies. So come see us in a month or so, and we'll have some more data on that. But most angel investors, they want to help make the world a better place and those kind of things. So those are helpful in raising capital. But I personally don't have a lot of experience seeing social purpose or B Corps raise capital,
So
but we've done due diligence on a few.
Like, are you mostly seeing, if you see that label, you're like, oh, that's philanthropy, it's not
Well, that's the how do we create something in the middle there? And right now it's either all philanthropy or angel. There's not many people who are in the middle, but there's a few, and we're wondering if there's a lot more because we have so many philanthropists here in the Northwest, to John's point, but they're generally not angel investors because they have way more money than they'd ever want to make more, so they're generally just giving it away. So
I think if social venture partners were here, they would say that you can have it all, that you can do well by doing good. And so that's another group that is located within the Hub to investigate if you haven't already, since you're new to Washington. And didn't Moving Worlds come through Seattle Angel Conference and their social purpose corporation, yeah? And did you do the deal?
No, we didn't do a deal with them. They didn't make it to the finals.
Okay.
But they did get funded through a different route through the Seattle Impact Investors Group.
There we go.
Some of those people invested in them. So for us, what we care about is that an investment has a return on investment. And so we start with that, and we hope that they have a point and that they're making an impact. So as one of the members of the Seattle Impact Investors Group says, there's no such thing as impact investing. All investing has an impact. You just have to decide which impact it is. Mm-hmm. And the nice thing about a B Corp is that you know it's formalized what their plans are. And so if you're going to do impact business, then we want you to measure it and tell us about it and operate against that goal. And if you're not going to operate against that goal, don't pretend.
Lars or Andrew, Lars, please.
Yeah, I mentioned up front that I think we've done impact investing since 2006. But we do that by looking at the clean tech field. When we look at a company, we still very much look for, is this going to be a good return? Is this going to be a good investment, good company in a field that we think will have a really big impact? And I'm not 100% certain, but I think a couple of our companies have been B Corps, so I don't see an issue with that.
Andrew?
I was going to say, Zeno has actually planned Social Venture Partners event, and we just had a partnership with Fledge at our last investment forum event. And I'm not sure if any investments have been made, but I do know that there were 3 companies that did have investor interest from that event of 7 or 8 companies that pitched. So I think that it'll take a little longer to get those funded because of the complexities of that people just don't know what it is yet. But I think that everyone's open to it and everyone wants to make a difference, I think.
Great. Awesome. Tom, Doug, and then let's, how many more questions do we have? Are all 5 of you in line for questions or just the 3 there? All right, we can make this happen. Okay, so Tom,
very
Doug.
quickly, I think we've seen one B Corp come through Wings.
Okay.
And sitting in on the screening committee had a lot of questions about what the follow-up investors were going to think of this. So, you know, if you're doing an angel round and you're a B Corp and you're headed for the big venture round, you might want to think twice about it. So,
Doug?
Yeah, I like to get things real simple, invest in C Corps and preferred stock. But every time I write off a check because the company goes bank or bust, so I tell my wife, Lenny, congratulations, we're philanthropists.
All right, next question.
I was wondering, with the companies that you guys have been involved in, has there been areas that you've noticed a lot of them have stumbled in, say like finance or sales and marketing, or common areas that you see as problems in early startups?
Andrew?
I could start. I think Rudy Gaudre was just quoted by GeekWire saying that go-to-market strategy was something that Seattle struggles with. We've got a lot of really great tech talent, but what I see over and over and over again is people are focused on a distributor or some way to do sales, and they're not actually out there doing the sales. So I think more sales will help rise all tides and cover up any other sort of issues, at least if you're selling.
Great. Other perspectives on that? Great.
One of the big challenges is just the agreement amongst the founders and making sure that you have a solid foundation you're building the company off of. Oftentimes deals just don't go anywhere because the founders can't agree on what they actually want to do and they don't have their operating structure set up correctly.
Yeah, get that partnership agreement in place while you're still friends and the risk seems low. You will thank each other later. Great. All right, next up.
Hi, thanks for all your time tonight. If one has interested investors, a collection of investors, and they have yet to identify a lead investor, two-part question. One, what characteristics do you look for in that lead investor? And how would you put that in front of them and ask them, how would you approach that person that you've identified? Thanks.
Job of a CEO is to gather resources and to put momentum behind that set of resources to accomplish something. So this is one of the entry tests to being a CEO, of going and finding someone, looking them in the eye and getting to, oh God, this is great, and getting them to move. And if you can't get that conversation to go, then you're still in the not a CEO part of it. And so there's some work to make that go. They have to be passionate about what you're doing, which means you have to be passionate about what you're doing, and they have to believe you to jump off the cliff with you. And that's a personal relationship, and I don't know how to do it other than that.
Part of the big challenge of being a lead investor is that, okay, now all the work is on that person's shoulders to get stuff done. That's not what you want to communicate. You want to communicate that you got lots of people that are wanting to help with due diligence, and you just need them each to do one little thing. Hopefully a leader will merge out of that if you don't have one that's right there. But at least move forward, you know, get people to commit to what they can contribute today. The more they engage with you in the company, hopefully the more involved they want to become, and as they look towards actually investing, then you know, it'll kind of sort itself out. The people who are really interested and really passionate, you know, hopefully you'll attract them to your company.
Great. Doug and then Haresh.
I can't resist one more little limerick here. It's not a limerick, but the comment is, ask for the order and get it. Xerox has been supposedly, at least till 20 years ago, was the best place to go for training in finance, in sales. Ford company for finance. Xerox and other corporations have spent billions of dollars trying to get people to ask for the order. They can't convince salesmen to ask women, to ask for the order. Okay, so
my work is done
if
here.
you can't ask for the order, do you want to invest 50 versus 100? They probably won't happen. So you have to be aggressive on that. As for me, as an angel, I lie low a lot. If an entrepreneur can't find me, then I do not want to invest in his or her company, because they will not find a customer, and that save me a whole lot of time.
Great. Thank you. And Haresh, did you want to chime in?
Well, it's always hard to follow Doug. So maybe I should not. But the only thing I'd like to say is, it's not typical for you as an entrepreneur to look at as a lead to the person who invests the most or the group that invests the most. You may want to find the right match in that group of investors or the investor who can actually have an impact on the rest of the investors. And that's who I would pick as a lead.
Great. Thank you.
I think there's a couple of layers to that. you're talking about lead within a group, which I think most groups here will help you identify, and then it's getting a lead among groups, and you really want to pick the group that's most appropriate for you, because it is kind of, to the jump off a cliff analogy, it's a bit of a lemming mentality. You get a lot of people interested, you get more lemmings following you.
All right, so we're going to take our last audience question, then we'll do a lightning round of parting words from each of you, and then we'll be looking at an on-time arrival. So no pressure, but this is the last question of the evening.
I'll go back to basics. So the question is, when is the best time for an entrepreneur to seek angel funding? And it's not a philosophical question, actually. I mean, what's the minimum that you are looking? Is the idea, is the team? And when is the best time in the very early life of a company to seek angel funding?
Andrew?
Yeah, so I think that every entrepreneur should always be looking for money, but not ask for it until they understand what the investor is looking for. So if you're an entrepreneur and you want to raise money, I would come to events like this. I would come to Xeno events or Keiretsu events or any events around town and start building relationships before you need the money. Because if you have that lead investor that trusts you already, it's a lot easier to get them to invest. And then I would show that you have a model that has some legs in some way, some traction, a customer, maybe a lead customer even, which would help make our decision a lot easier to fund a company.
Mm-hmm. Nathan?
I mean, the best time to raise capital is, of course, when you don't need it and you have money in the bank. But you want to, if you can bootstrap as long as you can to get to the point where you've got customers, so your cash need is for inventory. It's for just getting the cycle going, that hopefully you'll be able to get bank financing in the future. But, that's probably the best point to be at in terms of getting through the process the quickly if it's just a matter of funding orders and you've got reference customers right there ready to go. You've got some customers coming in, but you just need some more money to do X, Y, and Z to get there. You want to push your valuation and your company development as far as you can to prove out as many of the things that you can before you go raise capital. Because as Gary said, it's very time consuming, and you get a lot of advice. So you want to learn as much about your business and running it as you can and be the authority on it so you can get through the funding cycle quickly and get back to growing the company and selling your products.
John?
So the job of the CEO is to de-risk the investment. And so by being in sales already, you've de-risked the investment. By having a team, you've de-risked the investment. By having a focus that's proven in some way, you've de-risked it. And so you can get investment all the way along, depending on who you're talking to, because some people will invest in you, some will invest in an idea, some will invest in sales. Most of these people want to invest in sales. And so you're probably not asking Seattle Angels for investing in you unless you have a deep personal relationship with them, so you have to get the relationship.
And there's one thing that I have heard from investors that I've said when I was screening deals, and maybe some of you have heard this already, come back when you have more traction, and you're like, what does that mean? And I think the short answer is, it is going to mean something different for every business. But here's another way to look at it. Think in terms of momentum. All right, so I'm on the advisory board of a Techstars grad called LikeBright. They're a Facebook dating app, and they were kind of doing the right thing, like slowly building their customer base, and it was moving along in a very linear fashion. They did some product development, they listened to the market, and then they finally hit that viral coefficient. The shape of the curve changed, and that's what really excited their investors. So think about velocity and momentum. All right, so now we're just going to do very quick parting words of wisdom. I think I'm going to have to make Doug go last since nobody wants to go after him. So let's start with John. We'll skip Doug. Okay, come back to you, I promise.
So there's, not only are there these 9 organizations, but there's another 12 or 13 in the Northwest that will pay attention to you. And so my advice would be to spend a lot of time going to pitch clinics and other things early so that you polish up, and not to apply to all of them at once, but to be strategic about the process of going through them so that you build to the quality that you want. Angel Conference pretends to be at the bottom of this, Alliance of Angels tends to be at the top, investing higher numbers in later stage, as well as Kretsu. And so understand what the different groups want and where they think about things, and do it in that kind of order rather than blasting through 15 people all at once and beating yourself to death and not getting anything done.
Great. Lars?
The team tonight, which I think is appropriate, because you need, if it's a technology play, a good technology, and you need to be smart about the go-to-market strategy, but you've also probably heard it's all about management, management, management. So I think that's appropriate, and just make sure you're hiring and surrounding yourself with a really good team. You should hire a team that makes you scared and worried because they're so much better and so much smarter than you are.
Okay. Tom?
So I would suggest that you pick your time and pick your time well if you have that luxury. So, you know, take a look at the macro and the microeconomics. What's the competition like? You know, what's going on in the world around you and around what you think is your business. And if you can pick your time to go raise money, pick your time, because it'll just be that much more valuable.
Great. Nathan?
It's a great benefit if you can find other entrepreneurs who've been successful and build relationships with them, who've been through the fundraising process if you have not been so. Find other folks that are on the road with you. Get to know the other people at the pitch clinics and the other events. Get to know your fellow presenters. Compare notes with them as much as you can to try and learn as much as you can, as fast as you can. And then just, you know, the other thing I'd leave you with is just, you know, when we're looking at these ideas, all of them, they're lotto tickets. So we're looking for a big pop most of the time. So don't shortchange your opportunity in terms of how big your idea can be. Go as big as you possibly can. You can always shrink back to something. But, you know, all these deals are relative. They're going to be 50 or 100K per deal. We're looking for ones that can ultimately be the one that comes back, you know, and really pays for all the ones that we didn't do as well on.
Great. Andrew?
I really appreciate the tenacity of the entrepreneur, and I believe if you want to be an entrepreneur, you should be able to get those resources that you need, whether that's you need to pivot into a better idea or whether it's funding. I think you should be able to do that. I would challenge every person, every entrepreneur, to try and meet 2 people. Like every time they meet someone, ask for an introduction to 2 more people, and then ask them 2 more people, and then ask them 2 more people, because you'll meet everyone that's up here on the stage if you do that for a couple months. So.
Great. Thanks. Gary?
I'm trying to think of something I can add to all these great comments.
Keeps getting harder.
Well, this is sort of putting the damper on it, but if you heard of the World Bank study, anybody in here read the how many people have heard of Rob Wilbank's study? Well, just a few. He's a prof. He's been following angel results for many years, and the last result is 10 deals, 5 of them go broke first couple of years. 2 or 3 of them, you get some of your money back, and I'm talking about from the angel side, obviously, and you make all your money in 1 or 2 of them. And so be prepared when you're out there raising money. Some guy's going to throw that at you.
Thanks for the tip. And Haresh?
All right. Once again, echoing him, you heard most of the interesting and important things, but I'm going to leave you with a little movie that I just thought of, the message in that movie. It was a Tom Cruise movie. I believe it was Cocktails. So this guy is talking with his friend and, you know, saying that, so what should we do? And the person goes, I forget the name of that actor, but he says there are 2 kinds of people in the world. One are the workers and the others are the hustlers. Workers never hustle, hustlers never work. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, my advice is you have to do both at the same time. If you cannot, don't do it.
Well played, Haresh. All right, Doug, now you got to leap over that high bar. You can do it.
We haven't talked too much about tech and the like, but remember, any breakthrough major product has to be better, faster, and cheaper. All 3. If you got 2, it's a hard sell. If you got 1, don't even start. Better, faster, cheaper. Next comment is the Kauffman Foundation has done a national study. Actually, I think it was Harvard Business Review. You can do brain suck and learn a whole lot from working for people who are leaders and and they're team leaders and they're winners. So you don't have to you go work for leaders and winners. I see a lot of folks here are pretty young. You look young to me. Start your career, work for folks that are winners and leaders, do a brain suck on that, and maybe later on you'll be ready to start your own deal. Lastly, you don't have to be a CEO to be a winner. Okay, I never wanted to be a CEO because I wanted to work for people who were technologists and salespeople, and I respect them and you guys so much. I didn't feel I didn't want to or couldn't be a CEO. So be a member of that team, but you don't have to be the CEO to win. And do a brain suck on whatever operation you're involved in. Retain that stuff and keep every business card or e-card.
With that, can we all please give a huge round of applause for every one of these 8 panelists? You guys were not only...
Big hand for Rebecca.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Gary. All right. You guys were really candid and really great sports, so thank you for that. Just very quickly, in my new role as startup liaison for the city of Seattle, my job is actually to connect startups to resources. Basically, that means every one of you is my boss, so please come find me at startupseattle.com. I want to thank MIT Forum for bringing all of us back. Me, like a bad penny, I just don't go away. I think I've moderated this all 4 years that this program has been running. It's great to see some new and familiar faces. Go forth and conquer, do what you love, and do what you're best in the world at. Thanks, everybody.